friends, and welcome to Treasured Inheritance Ministry with myself, Aliyah. And the Bible Bites section is all about short teachings on answering questions that we normally get asked, or dealing with anything that's interesting in the scriptures that we can find more information on. And so today I want to share with you something that is actually seems very almost insignificant in a way, but it's actually something so deep and so special that we find in the first book of Samuel. And this Bible Bite is called, Did Hannah Get One or Two Portions from Elkanah? Now that's really interesting. I'm sure you're thinking, what is this about? Did Hannah get one or two portions? Well, in the first chapter of Samuel, Hannah is introduced to us, and Hannah needs no real introduction to us today because we know her so well. But in the first chapter of Samuel, we find Hannah married to a man named Elkanah, and they're introduced to us. She's introduced as a beloved wife, as a special woman who goes up to Shiloh with her husband every year to worship before Yahweh at his tabernacle where the priests are serving before the Ark of the Covenant. And yet we also learn in this, although she's beloved and she's special, we learn very, very quickly that Hannah is also barren and that she is struggling to have a child. And while her husband has another wife, which was normal in those days, and polygamous marriages were normal, and Elkanah has another wife, so he has two wives. And we learn that his other wife is blessed with sons and with daughters aplenty. There are many of them. And Hannah's grief is evident, and so is her pain right from the very beginning. She's also remembered, though, for her great faith and for her powerful prayers that she prayed. And also she's then remembered as the mother who was eventually blessed by Yahweh Elohim to give birth to one of the nation of Israel's most powerful prophets, a prophet who anointed the first king, who anointed the righteous King David after that, and who did so many beautiful, big, dramatic, profound things in Israel's history. So Yahweh had a plan with Hannah, and with her barrenness, and with her prayer, and with her faith, and with her life. He was going to bless her in abundance. But right here in the beginning of Samuel, the first book of Samuel, we read about her pain. And before that happens, where she gives birth to this child named Samuel, we have to pause and we have to consider then, as we encounter it, how Hannah's relationship was with her husband Elkanah. And something very deep and very significant happens here in 1 Samuel 1 verse 5, and that is what we're going to be looking at today. What happens gives us a very deep glimpse into the very humanity of the biblical characters that we often come to know over the years, that we often read about, but that we can also often forget that they are just human beings that experience the same things that we do. And what actually happens in verse 5 of chapter 1 is something very special, and it's about the humanity of these two individuals, and it speaks deeply to our humanity. So let us take a look at this particular verse in different versions of the biblical text. So we're going to be looking at 1 Samuel 1 verse 5. And the first one I want us to look at is the NIV. And it says, But to Hannah he gave a double portion because he loved her, and Yahweh had closed her womb. In the NLT it says, And though he loved Hannah, Elkanah, he would give her only one choice portion because Yahweh had given her no children. Goes on in God's Word translation to say, and even though he loved Hannah very much, he could give her only one share because Yahweh had kept her from having children. And the very last one, the WBT says, But to Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah, but Yahweh had rendered her barren. Now, hopefully you're reading this with a very astute eye, noticing that different Bible versions are saying different things. And so the question is, did she get one portion? Did she get two portions? What does the text really tell us? Because different Bible translations are saying different things. A double portion, one choice portion, one share, a worthy portion. What is actually going on? Now, when we encounter things like this in the Bible, it's so interesting to go into it and to really dig down deep into what is actually happening and what does the scriptures actually really say. And though, like I said when we began, that it would seem insignificant as to what Hannah really got, things like this really are intriguing. And especially if you love the stories of the people in the Bible and you want to know more about their lives and more about what was happening at the time, these things become actually precious gems and treasures. And that's what we're going to see in this verse 5. What is actually going on? What did she actually receive? So the Hebrew in this verse is very, very obscure, and it's actually quite confusing. It does not mention two portions or even a worthy portion. Rather, I want us to look at the direct Hebrew translation, because it would read something like this. To Hannah, he gave one portion of 2 faces, for he loved her. Now, the Hebrew word that is used here for faces has a root word of af at its very, very center. And this word refers to the nose. And it's also this, it actually, I say it time and time again, that Hebrew is a very, very concrete language. And every Hebrew word is connected to something that can be physically seen. So the word for af is this flaring of the nostrils that happens when you are sad, when you're struggling with your emotions, or specifically when you are experiencing anger. So when we have this reaction of life, of the struggling with emotion, this reaction of sorrow or sadness, when you're struggling, you're holding back the tears, or when you're angry, which also happens when you're angry, you try and hold back your tears, your nose is flaring, your nostrils are flaring. And this is what's happening here. This word for faces has the root word of af, the nose. What now is going on? So although Hannah had no children and Yahweh had closed up her womb, as the Bible tells us, Elkanah still gave her a portion of the offering that he offered up on the altar at the tabernacle. His love was very, very deep and very, very strong and very, very sincere for her. And he shared with her the best part of the offering, which was a worthy part of the offering. Yet when he gave her the portion, he gave it to her with deep love and deep affection. But here's the thing. The deep love and affection that he presented her portion to her with was also mixed with deep sorrow because of her barrenness. Now, Elkanah recognized his wife's longing for a child, and he shared that specific burden, struggling with his own emotions of sorrow as his hand brushed hers. Imagine they share the meat of the offering, and she is loved and he loves her, and they have a deep, deep connection. And yet at this present moment, while he's sharing that with her, he wears 2 faces, and that's not a bad thing. It's not being two-faced in that way. It's a dual emotion that's happening. It's one face of great love, and then it's another of great despair. And this is inherent in the meaning of the wording of 1 Samuel 1 verse 5. Elkanah was connected both to his wife's despair and her sorrow, and he gave her a portion of love mixed with that sorrow and that pain. So it's a double picture here, one of shadow and one of light, one of goodness intermingled with pain, yet love connecting it all together. And it's this love that should be shared between husband and wife, this carrying your burden and understanding that burden. But more importantly, what's happening here is that the Bible is actually showing us through the wording that it uses that we can't connect with modern day English translations because it seems so confusing. But what the writer is actually trying to tell us here is that Elkanah shared his wife's pain, and that when he still gave her the portion of the offering that he offered because he loved her. He gave it to her, and when he did, there was a momentary experience, a pause of, I love you, and yet I see your pain and I see your sorrow. So it's the beauty and the joy of loving someone, yet that other side where you're sharing their pain and you're sharing their sorrow. And he does try and give us some sort of solution or advice. And he says, why are you weeping and crying? When she gets all upset about, not having children. And he says, why are you weeping and crying? Aren't I worth more to you than 10 sons? And that sounds like a really sweet thing, I guess, but it's kind of insensitive. And it's kind of saying, aren't I worth more to you? And he's just trying to put some salve on the wound and trying to say, hey, let's get over this and it's going to be okay. And I don't know, perhaps it would have been easier for Hannah if she was his only wife. I don't know. But she also had that grief and that burden, and yet the scriptures also tell us that Elkanah's other wife was horrible to her and nasty to her. So here we have a picture of exactly what Romans 12:15 says, and it says this: rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. That is what we should do. That is the lesson. So here we see that Hannah and Elkanah's relationship was very deep, was very sincere, and that was very meaningful. And here they're sharing each other's burden and each other's pain. But Hannah herself, just as Rebecca did, goes to Yahweh and cries out to him as to what is going on. So did Hannah receive 1 or 2 portions from Elkanah? If you're ever asked that question, you can now answer. 1 portion, 2 faces. 1 portion, 2 emotions. 1 portion, sharing one another's burden. And that is a choice portion and a worthy portion to receive. Thank you so much for joining me. I pray that this Bible Bite has blessed you so much. If you want to hear more Bible Bites, feel free to subscribe to our channel or go over to our website, treasuredinheritanceministry.com, and get these notes and share them, because this is so fascinating when we can read and know and learn more about the characters in the Bible so that our humanity can connect with theirs, so that we can see that they were real people. I'm Aliyah from Treasured Inheritance Ministry. Thank you for joining me, and until next time.